So I'm going to teach you how to play this song. First off, using bar chords, which is how it's played in the original song and is most accurate. But if you're a beginner, I'm going to teach you a way that you can play it using open chords, mostly, and an easy way to play it too, because it is such a simple song. It's just 4 chords that are repeated again and again and again. We don't want anyone to miss out. So if you want to learn the beginner version, you can click through to the timestamp right here. I should also mention that in the original song that you hear on YouTube, that they are not tuned to standard pitch, meaning if you take your perfectly tuned guitar and play along to them, it's going to be ever so slightly out of tune. Why did they do that? I have no idea. To be annoying, I think. Alright guys, the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to play each of the chords with a very simple plucking pattern that will get you through the whole song. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a more complicated breakdown of how they're adding in their fancy little lead parts and picky things that make it sound the way it sounds. But first, I think it's important that you have a simple strum pattern, a plucking pattern, and the chords all locked down so you can just play the whole song through, no dramas, before I teach you the fancy version of it. So, to do that, we're going to play our first chord, which is an A chord, where we bar the 5th fret, all of the strings, and then we make an E-shaped chord above it, meaning it's just like an E chord, now up here. So, again, bar the 5th fret, and then make an E chord, so we put our middle finger onto the 6th fret of your G string, and then we're going to add our little finger to the 7th fret of your D string, and ring finger to the 7th fret of your A string. That note right there. Okay, that's an A chord. Okay, now the plucking pattern we're going to use is going to go bass, chord, chord. Okay, so that's bass using our thumb. It's always going to be played with our thumb, whatever the bass note might be. In this case, it's on our lowest string, the thickest string. Thick daddy over here. So that's bass, chord. And when I say chord, for this chord, I am actually plucking our G string, B string, D string, and A string. Okay. Like so. Okay, so again, when I say chord, I'm talking about these higher strings, and when I say bass, I'm playing that bass note. So again, the plucking pattern goes bass, chord, chord, and then repeat bass, chord, chord. All right, again, bass, chord, chord, bass, chord. Then our next chord is an F sharp minor 7. And to do that, we're going to bar our 9th fret of, all the strings except for our low E. Okay, so we're barring those 5 strings. Then we're going to add our middle finger to the 10th fret of our B string. And we're also going to add our ring finger to the 11th fret of our D string. Okay, F sharp minor 7. And our bass note now is no longer on the thickest daddy, but the 2nd thickest daddy, which is on our A string. Okay, and when I pluck the chord this time, I'm using our B string, which is 2nd string, and G string notes. Okay, so same plucking pattern again. Bass, chord, chord. Okay, so if we put it together. Bass, chord, chord, bass, chord, F sharp minor, chord, bass, chord. Now here's the change. We're going to use our last strum of this F sharp minor chord. We're going to chuck in a passing chord, which is the chord that helps you pass from one chord to another. So we're trying to get from F sharp minor, we're trying to get down to our D chord. So to get there, we're going to stop here for one strum on our E chord. That's called a passing chord in this case, because we're just passing by. We're not staying there, we're just passing by down to our D chord. So again, so we're going bass, chord, chord, bass, chord. Last chord is going to be this E chord. Now to do that, we're going to bar our 7th fret, again, not all of the strings. And then we're also going to make a bar on our 9th fret of our B string, D string, and G string. Okay? And that's an E chord. You can actually play this note for our bass note, okay, on the 5th fret, or you can use this open E, because they're both the note E. Okay, so up to you. So again, we're going bass chord, bass chord, bass chord, passing chord of E, and then we're going to slide that same chord down 2 frets, and now we're at D. Okay, this is the D chord. Same strum pattern. Okay, so that's bass chord, chord, bass chord, chord. Move it back up to our E. Where we're going to finish bass chord, chord, bass chord. Boom. That's the whole song. Then it repeats back to our A. There you go. So that's how you play the entire song. Now I'm going to break it down again, this time chucking in our lead guitar part stuff, our frilly, our picky stuff. And it's going to be a lot more complicated to follow along, so hang in there. I believe in you, you can do this. Okay, so we start out with our A chord, and there is a little lead guitar part that plays as well in the intro when the guitar first comes in. So if you want to learn that, it goes like this. It's quite a simple lick, but it's very helpful. You can use this in heaps of songs. So we start out on our 5th fret on the B string, which is our 2nd string. Okay, we play that once. And we're going to slide up, not like that, but to our 7th fret. Okay, and while you're down there, pluck the higher string, the E string, okay, on that string. So you're actually barring those 2 top strings, okay, your 1st string and your 2nd string. So you play that note on the 2nd string from the 5th fret, slide up to the 7th, grab that top 7th fret of your E string, and then slide down, and lastly play that note there on our highest string on the 5th fret. Like that. And it's quite nice when you just leave the notes ringing. So slide up and don't stop the notes, play that top note, and then just slide down and land on that same fret that you started on. You don't even have to play this last note with the right hand if you don't want. It's quite nice like that. Okay, so that's our nice little intro lick part that you can play if you would like to. Okay, so we're going to start with our bass note. Okay, with our thumb on the lowest string there. Then we're going to reach up and play with our first 2 fingers. We're going to play our G string and our D string. Okay, so that's our rhythm. Boom, blah. Okay, so bass, those 2 notes. Okay. Next we're going to play these dead strings. So we've got our chord right, but we're just going to let go of the chord ever so slightly on our left hand here. So we just let go of the strings slightly to give us these dead notes. So when we play it, it sounds muted. Okay, so, and the reason we do that is because they're going to play these muted strings. So, okay, so that is bass, and then our 1st finger to play our 5th fret of our D string, and then we play our muted G string. Okay, so that is bass, but it's muted. 1st finger on the D string, and then middle finger to pluck the muted G string. And the rhythm's like that. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so if we put that all together so far, we've got... Okay? And does it matter the exact notes that are being played there? Not so much. They're muted anyway. As long as you have 3 notes. Okay, so boom, pluck, boom, boom, pluck. Okay, boom, boom, pluck. Okay, then after our 3 muted notes, we're going to play. Okay, so to do that, we're going to play our G string, that note, and we're going to hammer on. So play the note once, then reach up with our little finger, or you can use your ring finger if you prefer, whatever finger, onto the 6th fret, or 7th fret, sorry. So we're going from the 6th fret to the 7th fret of our G string. And then lastly, we're going to play this 5th fret of our B string, or 2nd string. So if you keep the chord shape, you just simply need to play the G string, hammer on up 1 fret, and then pluck that note. So you can keep the chord shape. Just take these fingers off so that way you can play that hammered note, and then the B string. Okay, so it sounds quite confusing, but altogether it should go like this. Okay, let's go slowly. Again, bass, G, boom, blah, da, ba, da, da. You like my lyrics? No? Cool. Okay, so again, bass, G string, 3 muted notes, hammer on, and then land on that top note. Okay? Then we're going to go, after we do that, the next part is we're going to play bass, G string, bass, and then our top 3 strings. G string, B string, E string. Okay? So, okay, like that. Bass, G string, bass, and then 3rd string, 2nd string, 1st string. Okay? Okay, so that's the rhythm for that. So that is the first chord done. Let's put those parts together nice and slow. Again. Alright, our next chord is our F sharp minor 7. Okay, same plucking pattern as we used just before, where it's bass and then this string. Okay, so we've moved up a string each, so that is 5th fret, 5th string bass note, and then our 2nd string note, like that. So, okay, and our muted notes are played again. This time it's bass note, which is on the 5th string, and then our muted G string or 3rd string, and muted B string, 2nd string. Okay, and then we're going to hammer on from our 10th fret of our B string to our 12th fret of our B string. Okay, like that. So it sounds confusing again, but it's the same pattern that we just used for this chord, this chord just before. Okay, so that is like the bass, the pluck, and then the 3 muted notes. And then this time we just hammer on that 1 note. Okay, using our little finger to our 12th fret. So we're playing that 10th fret, and then we hammer on to the 12th fret with our little finger. Got that? Probably not, but good. Let's move on. Okay, then we're going to go, so that's bass, B string, and G string. So we're going to play bass, chord, bass, chord. Okay? Alright, so let's put together our F sharp minor part so far. Okay, so after we play, now our next chord is an E chord, and it's just a passing chord. So we're only going to play this once, very quickly. It's called a passing chord because we use it in passing from our F sharp minor down to our D. So we're trying to land on our D chord, but in order to get to the D chord, we're going to add this E chord as a step down. That's called a passing chord. So that passing chord is an E chord, and to do that, we're going to bar the 7th fret. Again, not all of the strings, forget this low E string. And then we want to play on the 9th fret of our B string, G string, and D string. Okay, I just bar it by laying down one finger across those strings. If you want to play it like that, like your A chord, where you use all three of these fingers to form the chord, that's totally fine too. Whatever you prefer. Okay, so that is that, and then we're just going to play bass chord once. Okay, then we're going to slide down 2 frets to our D chord. Okay, so it's exactly the same as the E, but 2 frets lower it becomes the D. Okay, so again. So here we're going to make this a sus chord by adding on our little finger to the 8th fret of our B string. Alright. Okay, same plucking pattern as we used previously. So we go bass, chord, and then muted 3 notes. Okay. So mute 3 notes. This I'm using bass, D string, G string. And then we're going to make it a sus chord by adding our little finger to our 8th fret of the B string. Okay? Like so. And then we're going to play the bass chord again. Okay, so to finish off that D chord, we're going to play bass chord, chord. Okay, one more time. So that's bass chord, chord. Okay, so in context. Okay, again. Then slide up 2 frets to our E. Same thing again. And then that leads us back around to our beginning again. Now that's the whole song right through, okay? Lastly, I'm going to teach you guys how to play a super simple version for our beginners, and it's just using these open chords. So the first chord is an A chord, like so. It's an open chord, so ring finger on the 2nd fret of our 2nd string, middle finger onto the 2nd fret of our 3rd string, first finger is going to go to our 2nd fret of our 4th string, A chord. Our bass note is on the A string, 5th string, sorry. Okay, now our plucking pattern is going to go bass, chord, slap, bass, chord, chord. Okay, so again, that's bass, chord, slap, bass, chord, chord. Okay, bass, chord, slap, bass, chord, chord. And it repeats again, bass, chord, slap, bass, chord, chord. And then we're going to change to our F sharp minor 7th chord. And to do that, we just bar the 2nd fret, all of the strings. Okay, this time our bass note is going to be our lowest E string here on the lowest string. Okay, and when I say chord, we're going to pluck those same notes that we played for the A chord. Okay, our B string, G string, D string. So bass, chord, chord, bass, chord, chord. Easy as pie. Now our next chord is a D chord, which I'm sure you already know. Nice, open, easy D chord. Bass note now is on our 4th string. Okay, bass, chord, and when I say chord, we're plucking our 3 highest strings. Bass, chord, chord, bass, chord, chord, and then you can either play an E chord, which you already know, or you can play this version of an E chord where you slide the D chord up 2 frets, and your bass note now is going to be the lowest E string. Bass, chord, chord, bass, chord, chord. I think this E sounds a little bit nicer than this chord in this case. Up to you. Then that takes us back to our beginning. A. Thank you so much for joining us. If you've enjoyed this, please consider subscribing. We release new tutorials every week. Please also comment with a song that you'd like to learn next. God bless you guys, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.